Welcome to Planetary Calendar's Astro Portraits. I'm Lahni DeAmicis, one of the calendar's astrologers. This week we're doing the chart of Yvonne Orji, who is a very talented comedian and actress who is on the TV series currently Insecure, but she started off in stand-up. And she has a fascinating chart, and the reason we're using her chart is because it shows how a stellium functions. Stellium is when you have a group of stars or planets really all together. Stellium comes from the stars, but it means a group of planets all in the same sign. And it supercharges that area, that part of the person's life. There's a second reason we're looking at her charts is because when the fixed stars, as they're known, Antares, Spica, Regulus, when they're linked up with a planet, it oftentimes will transport a person from obscurity to fame. And Yvonne has a number of these star connections. So we're going to look at both of them today. She is born December 2nd, 1983. Very active year. There's a lot of well-known people at that time. We don't know the time. She was born in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. She came to the United States as a young child with her parents. The chart is interesting, but like I said, we don't have a time, but we looked at her, and the thing is, she lives her life very much out in the open, like a true Sagittarian. So we have a lot of references about her, and she does a great presentation called Mom, I Made It, where she talks a great deal about her family. So we know quite a bit about her father and her mother, and when you know that in a person's chart, it's a lot easier to figure out how does the chart position? So what is the time? Also, Lahni looked at her and said, oh, well, she obviously has Libra Rising. And I trust Lahni in these things. And the thing about Libra Rising is that you normally figured that beauty is going to be important. Yvonne has Mars and Venus in Libra. And when you move them up to the Rising, it explains why she is a serious fashionista. If you go online and Google her name and clothes, you get swamped with the amount of material that comes up with her and things about her beauty routines, and she is just a Venus girl. And which is saying a lot, because with so much Sagittarian in her chart, you expect her to be very athletic, and she ran track in school, and she's got a great physical presence, but that Libra is very, very strong. Now she has we'll figure on the Libra rising. Like I said, this is a rectification. Sagittarius sun and a Scorpio moon. And you see it sometimes in her photos. There's a certain love that she has for black leather, which is very much a Scorpio moon thing. She also has Saturn in Scorpio conjunct her moon, which adds a certain depth to it. And she has Pluto in Scorpio. So she has 3 planets in Scorpio. 2 planets in Libra, Mars and Venus. And how many major planets? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major planets in Sagittarius. The Sun, Uranus, which is conjunct the Sun in the same degree. They call it partile. It means you're bound to Uranus. And Uranus tends to supercharge things. It's like having your fingers stuck in an electrical plug. It just really charges you up. Jupiter, which is the ruling planet of Sagittarius, in Sagittarius, Mercury, and Neptune. Now, what about these stars we're talking about? First of all, the Sun and Uranus are at 9 degrees Sagittarius. This is the star Antares, a giant red powerhouse that tends to make people loud. It tends to make them bigger than life. We just did a portrait recently of Bette Midler, who you would think would be the complete opposite of her, a tiny little woman, and here Yvonne Orji is this very tall African woman, and yet they have their sons both at Antares. There's really a certain similarity between these two personalities. She also has her Mercury. Remember, she's a comedian. She's all about communications. Her Mercury is at 26 degrees Sagittarius. There's not a star. It's the galactic center. It's the huge black hole at the galactic center, which is actually a very strong esoteric point. which is very funny because she was really caught about what she wanted to do with her life. She was supposed to go to a medical school, and then she took a particular course. I think it was one of the biology courses, and she thought, this isn't going to work. And she was really stuck with what she was going to do with her life. And she basically asked God, and God, she heard a voice say, comedy, you do comedy. Now, how many people are going to be told to do comedy? She thought, okay. And so she ended up doing comedy in a beauty pageant, once again, Libra Rising, and she killed. She was great. She had never done it before. She never thought about doing a comedy skit before. And yet, Mercury in Sagittarius, a very powerful esoteric point, plugs her in. Okay? What else do we have going on? Venus is in rulership. Venus is in Libra in rulership. It's not only in rulership, it's at 24 degrees Libra. At 23 degrees Libra is the brightest star in the constellation Virgo, Spica. And one of the things that this does, especially when it's Venus, is it makes people artistically very prolific. It just makes them like a copy machine. And if you look at her body of work for a young woman, she's been tremendously prolific. She has Mars in Libra, which is actually what's called a detriment position. It's opposite the rising position. But don't think of detriment in a negative way. Think of detriment as introvert. It basically is a way of saying that where Mars usually likes to be extrovert in Aries, when it's introvert, it means she feels it internally. So she has this very strong sense of her physical inner beauty and how that relates to the world, which you very much see. She's very careful in how she moves and in terms of how she relates to people. It makes her, which is actually a very nice position because with so much Sag in her chart, and especially with Antares, she could just bowl people over. But as it is, she gets there and she wants to know, what do you think about it? What do you think about it at the same time? The Moon in Scorpio conjunct Saturn is interesting because it's actually a very deep position. It's what's called the confidant position, conjunct Saturn. This is a very deep position. Well, it relates very strongly to her mother and her father, who are very religious. She's a very, very conservative religious Catholic. And that's sign of that. And these were people who were very ambitious for their children. The fact that she was going to do comedy, they just couldn't conceive of this. She was supposed to be a doctor or an attorney or something in the professions. But they're very conservative. Now, of course, the fact she's become quite famous and successful is, I'm sure, definitely satisfies that need. But she has that core in her personality. Now, what's interesting is the chart is very compressed. If you look at it the planets go from Mars at 7 degrees Libra to Neptune at 28 degrees Sagittarius. That's a little bit more than a sextile. So it's a powerhouse, it's very compressed. She has other things in other areas around the chart. She has, Pallas in Capricorn, Ceres in Aquarius, Juno in Aries, Chiron in Taurus, and Vesta in Gemini. And that's interesting because there you have the 4 asteroids are all separated out from the main planets. The asteroids have a lot to do with, you might say, our feminine self, all the places where we have to take care of things. They're all kind of separated out from this big bundle of energy. So throughout her life, she really separated this out. And one of her things is she is a great campaigner for virginity until marriage. And she was born in 1983, and she's not married yet. She's a campaign. She's spoken about this. That's really interesting in terms of the rectification, because what do we have very high in the chart? Vesta and Gemini. Vesta is, of course, the sign of the Vestal virgins, highly elevated in her chart, in the 9th house, the area in which we get on our soapbox and speak out to the world. In Gemini, Gemini is the twins, it's pairing, but it's also about being the ultimate kid. And she, in this rectification, has the sun in the 3rd house, the house of what? The jokester. Right? So it's a really good rectification. She also, interestingly, she's put off marriage while she has Juno, the marriage asteroid, in the 7th house in Aries, the sign of the solitary person. stationing. In other words, it was at the point to transition between retrograde and direct. So kind of stuck there, waiting, in Aries. And it's opposed loosely, actually very exactly, by the Venus, and opposed by sign by the Mars. So here as a Libran, she always wants partnership, and yet that Juno, her concept of what she wants, that one person that she wants, that one unique person she wants for her partner, has her waiting. So it's a fascinating chart. Hope you enjoy it. Come see us at planetarycalendar.com for your weekly forecasts, or spaceandtime.com, and be well.